And we're back. So yes, so from what we gather, Keyshawn is able to fight Rome off and is frazzled because, she's going already through enough trauma when it comes to Derek, her boyfriend, and now this to the layers and plates of trauma that she already has. Thankfully, though, that she counted on Woody. Woody didn't go anywhere. He stayed in the hotel room where they were all talking prior to going to Rome's private suite. And again, how many situations? It had very much a very Weinstein, Bill Cosby, horrible feel to this episode. But this happens. This happens a lot, especially to very precocious, naive um, young Angelus, very much like Keyshawn, always aspiring. And again, not the no shade to her. If anything, that's why she has been led to this point because look, let's just be honest. Derek never really does find a way or a footing in terms of taking care of the household. His family, his well-to-do family, cut him off, and he was and also I'm sure had greatly to do that he was in this interracial relationship. I'm sure his family wanted him to end up with a white woman, and because he favored Keyshawn, he was basically cut off from any kind of funds, and I'm surprised they didn't associate from him 100%. And it took a while for his family to warm up to Keyshawn, and perhaps even the children. But for a while, the person that was footing the bill has always been Keyshawn. Either her father gave her a down payment to where they were living, and it was a little shack, and I think it's the same shack they live in today. And her busting her behind 8 months pregnant with their first child at Walgreens just so that they can make ends meet. He wasn't bringing anything to the table. And as in that episode, it was led to believe that, especially when she was that far along, and again, what woman isn't, you know, I mean, she was already frustrated the fact that she was in this position. Not to mention that she's also very young. Their squabbles are just over anything, and the way that it's depicted in this episode, and according to the narration to Uncle Clifford, who again had such great detailing, even in the way that he would enunciate and say certain sentences that made it very entertaining and so heartbreaking and so compelling at the same time. Again, kudos to these writers. Bravo. That he makes it a point that no one expects for their spouse, boyfriend, whatever, what have you, to attack you. He makes it known in that phrase the first time, and blah 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 blah, and it goes into, and we see in this very difficult scene, which again, these are brutal honesties that sometimes really need to be discussed, and really showcased on screen, of how things happen like this. Violence is not only happening to women, but specifically black women, for this particular show, and just nationwide. But again, it's a story that reflects reality, and her utter disbelief that she's 8 months pregnant, and he loses it so much that he nearly squeezes the life out of her. He squeezed her neck, and it culminates to where she is experiencing trauma yet again. We go really back and forth with this episode of trauma that was pre-existing to trauma that is currently existing, and how they both kind of marry each other. It was really well written, that episode. And how she also yet somehow finds her way trying to go back to her home and seeing if they can provide some form of shelter and safe space for her, and her stepmother still being the same petty annoyance that she was from the very beginning, and herself was actually going through something, because after the prom, when we suspect that Keyshawn may have gotten pregnant after that night, she got home early and she saw her stepmother on the couch crying. Crying over what? And she made a point that kind of still sticks in, at least in viewers' heads like myself, and then it bleeds into the next episode when they do the recap. There's an emphasis there of like, careful, because everybody saw how he was trying to, woo her, Derek, at the time, and there were still no babies. He had gotten her that dress and that gown, and she was like, wow, everything fit you like a glove, like everything was like, ready made for you. But careful when a man treats you like a Barbie, he can easily replace you. So I feel like that's an indication of what's to come. But nonetheless, yeah, her stepmama did not want to hear it, cast her away in the pouring rain, for heaven's sake. The poor girl was 8 months pregnant. She has to hobble back home. And of course, like any abuser, any narcissist, fills up the room where they were going to put they have the crib for the baby, the impending baby, and he apologizes and says it'll never happen. He's better than that. He's going to be better than his family and his father, who was physically abusing him. All lies. All lies. And there's an indication there, too. It's like, it's unfortunate that all the signs are there, and there's an indication of her that if she stays married or stays connected to this man, she's not gonna have a really good outcome. It'll lead to something, and probably something horrible. But if she's not ready to be saved, it all depends on the person. It really does. Every case is different, but if that person is not ready to let go and walk away, you can try to help that person as much as you can, and they won't budge, which is really sad. But she did get to tell Wody, which is a Little Murder manager, and I love Wody. Wody, not for nothing, with that deep baritone, Barry White voice. I don't know where it comes from. Who was to know that little Wody, who's doing his little five and dime thing, but he is really trying to get Little Murder out there, and he is going for that grind, who, in comparison to Rome's connects and all this nonsense, she is able to confess to him, like, look, he did this to me, he tried it, and to sexually assault me, and he has video on Little Murder, and he's threatening to kind of like put that out there. So he's like duly noted. And then before you know it, Keyshawn runs back. She's like, I'm done with this. I don't care. This is over for me. This man only just wanted one thing, and so she'd rather go back to the horrible thing that is her home life than to stay there. And again, can you blame her? She wanted to get back to her babies. So who was to suspect by the end of this episode that her white knight, unexpected white knight, whether she knew it or not, was Wody. Wody waltzes into Rome's disgusting, whatever he's doing there. It's like a orgy or something that he's having. He had to throw himself. He couldn't deal with the fact that he didn't get what he wanted, and so now he has a bunch of couples having sex, and it's crazy. It's really explicit, that scene. And then, him being the lover of coke, Wody brings him a little vial and whatever, and they're talking about business and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, Rome starts having a bad reaction, and he starts keeling over. And here's Wody speaking to him in the most calmest of voices, but telling him, like, so how do you want to be buried? Just a point to, like, careful of, I don't know if this is a note to us as viewers, or this is like the little, funny, nuanced joke in there that's funny but not funny. Careful careful when you try to piss off an undertaker, because they really do know what to do with the body. You know, like that was like, and not for nothing, throughout most of these episodes while they were on the road, they had instances of that playing like the murder game, which like they would always like wink at somebody and 30 seconds later that person was to die. So the way that episode ends, and then you can see that he's basically confessing that Rome has, snorted something that has an inkling of fentanyl, which we all know is fatal. And he was like, and Keyshawn told me everything, and I mean everything. So night night, motherfucker, or whatever he says to him, and he walks out, and he winks at him before he walks out, and then winks at the camera, which is kind of creepy, but so good at the same time. Like, I'm telling you, this is what I want to see. I don't know about everybody who's a fan, but I want to see that. I want the unexpected. I don't want to know how things are going to end. I want to be shocked. I want brutal honesty, and I want really compelling storytelling. And this show just has it. That I'm almost kind of dreading that it's almost maybe midway through the season that my heart's gonna be broken when they go on hiatus again, because it's like, no, I think I'd be happy if they were constantly on the air. But anyway. So moving into now this last episode, Savage. And it's savage in every sense of the word. Now we come back to our characters. We can see that Shell, the situation that is happening with Mercedes. Shell is the one that's taking care of Mercedes' biological daughter and has fallen through really horrible times. Mercedes still trying to cope with her because, again, she's raising her daughter. So even though she's in better standing and she at least counts on money, regardless of how she's making it, she is providing food for both Shell and her daughter. Shell still thinks of herself as high and mighty and higher, some form of hierarchy here, that she still is compelled to not let her even take care of her child. She said, look, I think you need a break. You need to get yourself together. Let me take my daughter Terica off your hands for a while until you put yourself together. And she's like, you're not slick. You're not going to take this kid away from me. It's like almost like it's gotten to the point where this child is being used as some pawn to like get back at Mercedes for having Mercedes had an extramarital affair with her. I don't even think at this point it has something to do with genuine concern or love for this poor girl. So, and then, yeah, we see that they're still dealing with the club. Oh, before I even what an opener, though, really, for this episode. I mean, we see Diamond and Big Bone going at it really pretty hardcore. And yes, she has a fabulous body, and so does he. And yes, we pay homage. Even the music that is playing for this particular scene is not in the background, but, we hear it. We pay homage to Kia, who was one of the first, like, rappers of her heyday in, like, early 2000s, when she had My Neck, My Back. And who was to say that she would be the one to usher in the rapstresses that we know today? Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion. We have all these great female artists, but she was one of the many at the beginning. I mean, we had her, we had Trina, we have all these, great rap stars from the South. But that was the most explicit one up until that point. The lyrics, I mean, I suggest for you to Google it, but it was and you see it as they're having a very lustful scene, but she also notices that Diamond won't look at her, because every time that Diamond is looking at her, he's now envisioning Keyshawn. I think he really had a thing for her. He's mad at her, but I think he still harbors deep feelings for her. And as they're done with their tryst, and she walks over to his altar, because remember, he's very much into this spiritualism and everything. She's about to touch that freaking ring, which again he's put there for some form of protection, and he warns her not to touch it, but she's like, "What's this?" and whatever, and I guess she takes it like, "Okay, I won't touch it, but I need you to look at me. When we're together, I need you to look at me." And then they, have sex again, but. But, so moving forward, yes, and okay, so now we return back to the coupling of Little Murder and T, and so you can see that they're off tour because Rome is no longer, and they're kind of like, how did he die? Oh my God, I can't believe he died. Everybody's like, well, I don't think it's COVID, but something happened to him. And so, but he's been able to usher in some money, Little Murder, that he wants to celebrate with whatever he has rekindled with T, and buys him like this, really beautiful car. And again, very telling to real life, because during this whole pandemic, people were loving oh God, I can't tell you a day that doesn't pass by when you're hearing people doing donuts. Now, this is an appropriate area to do donuts, at a parking lot, not necessarily the sidewalk or the streets where there's a lot of busy traffic. But again, this has been nationwide. What haven't we gone through with this pandemic for the last 3 years? But nonetheless, so very truthful to what's been happening and whatnot. And you can see that T is having a moment here, because I think up until this point, he's been shown love. I think he had something definitely with Little Murder in prison, but again, you can't advertise your relationship, open like that, especially when you're like this brolic looking thing with a bunch of tattoos and whatnot. So very hush hush, very closeted. So this open display of, I care for you, and it's just you and me, we're rising to the top, and what I won't do for you. And he's like, he gets really sensitive. You can see that, like, maybe up until this point he hadn't been shown any form of like something so giving and so loving like this, that he can't handle it. And he starts weeping a little bit, but he gives him his time. He just starts doing the whole donuts thing. He goes into a barbershop. He gets a haircut too, finally fixing himself up. Again, also his sweatshirt is like the King of Hearts and whatnot. And you see that maybe we're kind of going through some kind of positive transition for this character. Cleaning himself up, he's getting more closer to Little Murder. And although the way that scene ends too, there's like the barber, you can see he's kind of outdated. He only has like music from like the late 90s and early 2000s. And he's like questioning who Little Murder is, which again, we have instances of funny in this show. But as Little Murder is taking a phone call by Keyshawn, who finally gets back to him, the barber swivels the sheet, the seat that T is sitting on, and the camera pans to, I believe, a former jazz singer. I didn't catch the name, but you can see that alongside with him are like this devil with these deviled horns, perhaps his demons still lingering for that particular artist. And I think that's our indication of how this episode is going to go forward. So, moving forward with this coupling, they go to like a wing shop, and there isn't necessarily anybody that there's a private moment between them. And there's also a funny moment too, because there's a waitress that's kind of laying it on real thick when it comes to T, and she's complimenting his eye color and kind of almost even like wanting him to like give her, switch her, slide her the DM, or not slide into his DMs, but slide her his phone number. And you see that like Little Murder's almost like jealous, like, can you get us some water and get yourself a cup of water too, like calling her thirsty. And then she's is like rude, and it's but it just tells you that they're having an intimate moment. And he's like, oh, I didn't know that this was like so serious. He's like, this is a date. But then everybody has said, most reviewers online is like, why would you take him on your first supposed quote unquote date to a wing shop? Like, take that guy to a nice 5-star restaurant or something, But again, for them, it just makes sense. He does also ask him about Clifford and his feelings. After he left prison, I mean, again, he was gonna, life was gonna continue, and so he was just curious about Clifford, but he could tell that he is in love with Clifford. All those postcards he sent him were so intimate and beautiful and detailed that he knew he had something going on with him. Now, as they're at a gasoline station, T realizes, like, wow, life has evolved so much that, I don't even know how to pump gas anymore. How do you do this? And I think he starts, the inner workings of his head, he starts realizing, Jesus, how much time has passed that I don't even know if I can keep up with things. Look what's happening in the world. Look what's happening in technology. Where do I find myself in this contemporary space? And then on top of all that, all his demons that are still bogging him down. And there's a moment too where Little Murder hears himself, because now we see that DJ Never Scared was able to use his sample and used it for a new track called, for a rap songstress or raptress, rap artist named Tina Snow, but it's really Megan Thee Stallion. So we see why the Savage is like advertised throughout most of the episode, because it's our introduction into Megan Thee Stallion's character. So then you see the euphoria, like, oh my God, I'm on the radio, can you believe this, or whatever. And so we can also see that in his eyes, T's eyes, is almost like, oh, he's gonna really make it. So I think I'm okay with whatever decision I'm about to take, because he's gonna be okay. Like, he's all right. He's sunshine right now. He's in the sunshine, in the spotlight. So moving forward, Keyshawn's also on her, I think she finally realizes that, especially also because in the last episode, which I forgot to mention, that as she came back, she realized that Derek was beating up on the children, and the children are relatively small. Like, the eldest is like 3 years old, is a little boy.